Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 210 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 66 of A Storm of Swords, that's Tyrion 9.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They have some additional information about the characters and geography and just the background to this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right, even though it's the penultimate day of my son's time in this state.
Oh God, here we go.
There we go. Now I'm going to...
Wistful Mackelly.
No, but so this weekend, we, he doesn't live in Charlotte. That was the city he used to live in. And he doesn't live there anymore. But a lot of his stuff was still in storage there because he wasn't sure whether he was going to be moving back to Charlotte or moving to Pennsylvania, depending on whether he got the job in Pennsylvania or not. So we just put it all in storage in Charlotte. So his new company is paying for his move to Pennsylvania, which is very cool. It's that's great. But the way moving companies do is they give you a load window and a delivery window. Load when they load it up in their truck and delivery when they bring it to your new place. And so the load window was about 3 days long, but they gave us a specific time in that window. They were going to meet us between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. this past Saturday morning. So it's about a 2.5 hour drive from us. So we either had to be up about 5 o'clock in the morning to get there on time, or what we decided to do was drive down the night before, stay in a hotel, and then meet the movers at the storage unit. Yes, yeah. So we get down there the night before and get up the next morning, and we get there at 8, and as we're sitting there, about 15 minutes into sitting there, we get a phone call from the actual guy that's driving the moving truck, and he says, I'm in Asheville, which is several hours from Charlotte, and I have a flat tire, so I can't get to you until Monday.
not 11 a.m.
Right.
Monday.
Yes. So we're like, well, there's a bit of a problem. We just drove 2.5 hours and stayed in a hotel to meet you here, and now what do you want us to do? And he's like, I don't know. It's the place that repairs the tire can't do it until Sunday or whatever, and I can't get to you until Monday. So we're like, okay. We get off the phone with him, call the main office, and they're like, Ethan was like, explain what we did. We don't live in, he doesn't live in this city, and we drove down here, paid for a hotel room, and they were kind of like, well, that sucks to be you, but it still fits within our load window, so it is what it is. And
wow,
she was like, and I was so irked. I wish he had given me the phone. He's a young 20-something. He doesn't quite have
we all become more bolshy on the phone as we get older.
Yes. As I would have pointed out, it may be within your load window that you gave us, but we are here within the day and time frame that you gave us.
Yeah.
Yes. So I don't know what you have to do to fix it, but get someone here within this time frame. But he didn't have me on the phone. So we also, I drove my van, my elderly Mace Tyrell-like van, 2.5 hours full of other stuff that he did bring to the house that needed to go on the moving van.
That was going to go on the truck.
Yes. So
you couldn't even take the stuff out of storage and put it in the van because the van was already full.
And yes, and the van is no way going to make it to Pennsylvania and back. I would never trust it.
No, I just meant so you didn't have to go back to Charlotte.
Oh, right. Yes. No, we would never. It was way too. I mean, there was a bed in there and a bed frame and a couch and all this stuff. So we're sitting there when we're like, okay, well, we've got two options. we could cancel the contract with the moving company and just go get a U-Haul and do this ourselves and not worry about having, a moving company do it. We're only doing that because his company was paying for it. So might as well take advantage of it. Or we could get a second storage unit, put all the stuff in the van in a second storage unit, then give both the keys to the person at the front desk at the storage unit. Neither are ideal.
And ask the person in the storage to give it to the truck driver when he finally arrives.
Yes. Neither were ideal, but that is the option we ultimately went with.
Yeah, that's the right option. I mean, miserable, but at least you didn't have to come back.
Yes. So that's what we did. I mean, once we nailed down a plan, it went fine. I'm still irked at this company. Yeah. I won't rake them across the coals publicly, but I will probably never use this particular company again.
Yeah, you'll be sending them this podcast and say your name will be mentioned in the next episode.
Right. And wouldn't you know, on the way back, we got stuck in not one, but 2 traffic accidents that added at least an hour to our drive home. So it ended up being a 3.5-hour drive home. Yeah. And at one point, I had to go through a rest area, like a rest area on the side of the road. I had to go through a rest area, not actually use the rest area, just drive through it.
To get around the traffic.
To get around at least, a quarter mile, half mile stretch of the traffic just to cut a little bit. Anyway, so, going swimmingly so far.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was at the beach last weekend, as you know, and had a great time. And when we came back, we had plain sailing on the drive back, apart from we had a 20-minute delay because of a dog running in the street, like running on the sort of freeway. And it had like 10 cars stopped and people with leashes trying to sort of corral this dog.
Oh my goodness. I've never seen such a thing.
Mm-hmm. It was crazy. The dog just stayed in the road. My driver, who's my neighbor, was going to get out and help. I was like, if that dog, we're in the middle of nowhere and that dog's acting loony, let's stay in the car and not get out. Yeah?
Windows up.
Exactly.
Well, how did it get resolved? Did they?
We eventually inched our way past this loose dog and carried on. So
you don't know how.
No. But believe me, there was a whole team of people trying to solve it. But I will say that as we got alongside the dog was trotting. The dog trotted in all directions, but as we got alongside it, it trotted sort of like opposite to us, so it was going along the side of the car, going in the opposite direction. But we were crawling past so as not to scare the dog. And the guy behind us in a big pickup truck blared his horn at us.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Oh, that would send me as near to road rage as I could possibly be sent.
But on happier things, I think Carson is trying to put zingers in to get into the podcast. I decided this because Lucas wants to buy his girlfriend a gift. And he asked me what was appropriate, sort of like, he wanted to pitch it right, sort of the right level of romanticness, level of expenditure for how long they've been going out kind of thing. And
right. Not put $20 in an envelope, but also not get her a diamond ring somewhere.
Exactly. You found the extremums of what we're talking about.
Yes.
But so I helped him a little bit. We came up with a few ideas. Next day, I told Carson that Lucas and I were doing that. And she said, he asked you?
That is a logical question. I gotta say. So did she agree with the advice that you gave him, or did she go?
She didn't think it was terrible. Yeah, she didn't think it was terrible, but she probably was thinking, where was that kind of thoughtfulness for me?
For her, it was the $20 inside the envelope.
All right, let's get down to business. How did we leave Tyrion Lannister? Last we saw of Tyrion, he was being abused by his nephew at the young king's wedding to Marjorie Tyrell. Amongst the many indignities that Tyrion was forced to endure is to act as cupbearer to the king. But Joffrey's malicious delight ends abruptly as he chokes and dies. It's not the best time to have been holding the cup. In his death throes, Joffrey points towards Tyrion, and Cersei doesn't need any more evidence and accuses her brother of regicide. He's promptly arrested. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Well, Kevan Lannister visits Tyrion in his cell. He's to be tried before 3 judges, Tywin Lannister, Mace Tyrell, and Oberyn Martell. No sympathy is likely to come from that panel. What about a trial by combat? Kevan agrees that that's Tyrion's right, but that Gregor Clegane has been summoned to stand as Cersei's champion. Cersei is amassing witnesses, and Tyrion appeals for some of his own. Kevan points to the paper and quill. Tyrion need only write the names and they will be summoned. Tyrion states his innocence, but Kevan can only muster a, "I wish I could believe that."
Left alone, he cannot come up with anyone. Podrick arrives and is dispatched to find Bronn. He doesn't come back that night. Next day, Tyrion writes the word Sansa. Could she have done it? He cannot believe it, not without help. Her departure has convinced Tyrion that Joffrey didn't simply choke. That evening, Kevan is concerned that she's his only witness. She's nowhere to be found. Podrick still doesn't come back until the next morning.
Pod arrives with Bronn, who looks wealthy and content. He's to marry Lully Stokeworth. Tyrion points out some of the issues, dull-witted, pregnant, second daughter, etc., but Bronn's not concerned. Tyrion lays out lavish bribes, but Bronn knows who his opponent would be. And as Tyrion puts it, Bronn had a lofty notion of what his skin was worth. Tyrion declares that he'll fight the mountain himself, and Bronn leaves hoping to hear that song of victory.
The night before the trial, Tyrion still has no witnesses for Kevan. He's escorted to the throne room, which is crowded with viewers. Tywin asks Tyrion if he killed the king. No, is the reply. When asked if Sansa did, he deflects, saying that Joffrey choked. The witnesses are called and are not to be cross-examined. Balon Swan goes first, and he speaks of Tyrion's bravery on the Blackwater. Byrd admitted that Tyrion did hit the king on the day of the riot. Meryn Trant confirms and elaborates. The Kettleblacks recount his "your happiness will turn to ashes in your mouth" speech to Cersei, but fail to mention the whipping of Alayaya. And Sir Osmond adds that Joffrey asked for protection from Tyrion, who had designs on the throne.
Day 2 is forensics. Autopsy shows no blockage of the airways. It was poison. Grand Maester Pycelle then displays a host of poisons that Tyrion took from his cell. After this, it's a plethora of minor characters testifying that they saw Tyrion fill the cup, give the cup to the king, and the king's death throes. That night, Kevan is sympathetic. The trial's not going so great, and there's no sign of Sansa. Tyrion had asked to see Varys, but Kevan shares that the spy will testify against Tyrion tomorrow. Kevan urges a confession and taking the black. Tyrion recalls what became of Ned Stark with that offer.
Kevan reckons it's a good outcome. If Tyrion is guilty, the wall is better than he deserves, and if he's innocent, it would be safer to be there than in King's Landing anyway. Tyrion refuses, misbelieving that his father would spare him. Kevan defends his brother passionately. Tyrion promises to consider things. He does so all night, but is no clearer come morning. Day 3 starts with Varys. The testimony is damning. Tyrion spoke of putting Tommen on the throne, his confiscation of the poisons, the threats against Cersei, and so on. That night, Tyrion gets a new visitor.
Oberyn Martell wants a word. He asks outright if Tyrion did it. Tyrion denies again. Oberyn says that he's met Alayaya and seen her scars. Cersei is making overtures of marriage, and his paramour Ellaria is very much into the idea. Cersei just wants Tyrion's head. But Oberyn tells a tale that explains his animosity toward the Tyrells and leaves no doubt that he wants nothing to do with Cersei. Oberyn is, however, grateful to Cersei, but for her preemptive accusation, it might be the Red Viper himself in the dock. He knows poisons, he wants the Tyrells kept far from the throne, and by Dornish law, the throne should go to Myrcella, betrothed of Oberyn's nephew.
Tyrion's of the opinion that Dornish law won't matter. Tywin will crown Tommen, but Oberyn thinks his brother might well crown Myrcella. Would Tywin wage war on his own granddaughter? Would Cersei on her daughter? Should he marry Cersei on condition that she supports her own daughter's claim? But Tyrion thinks that Cersei's opinion doesn't matter, only Tywin's. Oberyn, on the other hand, thinks that all men must die. Martell reckons that justice is always lacking up here, none for his beloved sister Elia and her children. Tyrion reaffirms that Armory Lorch killed Rhaenys, but now reveals the truth that it was Gregor Clegane that did for Elia and baby Aegon. Oberyn's not satisfied. Did Tywin give the order? No, is Tyrion's emphatic answer. Oberyn knows the lie of a dutiful son when he hears one, yet he's ready to save Tyrion. But he's only one of 3 judges, so how can he? Not as his judge, but as his champion.
Dun dun dun.
Mm-hmm.
How exciting. We've got a champion.
I loved this chapter so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love this chapter. It was really great. So much happening. I mean, like, that's the longest summary we've ever had, but even that is like, it's a snapshot of all the things that were going on.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on. It was very good. And, now we see why Tywin was talking to Oberyn Martell and Mace Tyrell in Jaime's last chapter. Jaime thought it odd, because the Tyrells and the Martells, not exactly bosom buddies. So now we see it's because...
He's recruiting judges.
Yes, he's recruiting judges. And now when Tywin told Jaime, was talking to Jaime at the end of Jaime's chapter, he mentioned the marriage idea between Oberyn Martell and Cersei. He did not mention anything about prospective judges, though, so this was news to us.
One thing I'll say, actually, is I spent a lot of time watching the television show for this chapter because the trial is scattered over a bunch of episodes, so I really had to watch
half a season.
Yeah. I had to watch a ton of episodes to find it all. But it made me think how the show, because it isn't POV oriented the way the books are, it's got a lot of scope to do interesting things. Like, there's several scenes interspersed. I'll mention them when we get to the comparison with the TV show, but there's several scenes interspersed between 2 characters who aren't POV characters, and you get to see their conversations. So, for instance, the TV show has Tywin talking to Oberyn Martell about being a judge in the thing.
Okay.
And it's that scope makes the show, I mean, the show was really good for a long time. I really enjoyed it.
Oh,
and it enhances the story in many ways to have the show. Not undermining the book in any way, but it is an enhancement to see those scenes that were, for us, are off stage.
Definitely. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Speaking of people that are off stage, we knew it was going to be a bad look for Tyrion with Sansa disappearing right at the moment that the king died, and that's definitely coming true.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing he could do, I mean, if you think about the scene at the aftermath, he's standing there like an idiot looking at the cup as the king dies. Meanwhile, Sansa Stark is absconding out of sight, out of mind forevermore.
Right.
He could say, I'm a patsy here. I'm left holding the cup. She's the one who did it. Look.
Yeah, I think in a little bit we'll talk about the fact that he defends her when asked about her involvement, because he's still honoring his vows as her husband and protector. But she certainly didn't give him much thought when she was bolting out of there. So he would have been within his right to be like, wasn't me.
To be fair to her, if you just bolted and didn't look back, you wouldn't think that Tyrion was necessarily going to get blamed.
True.
If you see the whole scene, you can see how it's going to end up. But
I believe that later, when they're fleeing the Red Keep, Dantas mentions that Tyrion's been blamed, but at that point, there's nothing Sansa can do about it anyway.
Well, let me just go back and say it wasn't him.
But Tyrion makes a good point about it, that even if they did find Sansa, the opinion would be that he is the one that orchestrated it, because she's his child bride, as he puts it.
Right.
So,
which wouldn't be too far off the truth if we assume that Sansa was partly involved, but in a sort of like as a stooge somewhat. Somebody is pulling the strings, and it's not Sansa.
Right.
And I doubt it's Dantas. And it possibly is Peter Baelish, but it might be others as well.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, definitely. Well, Peter Baelish wasn't at the feast, so someone...
he didn't do it. Yeah.
Right, yeah. But, it's also prudent of him to wonder how she would have gotten the poison if not from him, So
But if he thought that through, he would think, well, the one time that nobody pays any attention to her is when she goes to the Godswood.
It's the one time I don't accompany her or anybody else accompanying her. in a vacuum, it actually would have been helpful to Tyrion if Dantos had returned from the ship where he left.
Talk me through this thought experiment.
Because if Dantos comes forward, maybe for more gold, because as Kevan tells Tyrion, there's 100 gold dragons for turning her up, and I think there's 100 silver stags for information. So if he turns up, if he comes forward for more gold, tells how Littlefinger orchestrated the poisoning, and then the removal of Sansa, it might free Tyrion up, at least prevent enough of a doubt, or present enough of a doubt.
You make an extremely compelling case for why you kill Sir Dantos.
Yes, that's the thing, right? that is why Littlefinger killed Sir Dantos.
Right. Yeah.
But of course, if he did come forward, Dantos, that is, he would almost certainly have earned himself a date with Sir Ilyn for knowing about all this and not coming forward. So he wasn't probably going to do it anyway.
But again, he, like Sansa, can claim, partial knowledge of the plan. He knows that at the wedding there's going to be a commotion, and that's the point where he's to take her to the boat. Sansa's entirely innocent of murdering Joffrey. She did not know that was going to happen. Well, I think.
Right. Yes. She did not know that was going to happen. Right.
Dantos is in more trouble because he was very aware of the importance of the hairnet.
Right.
But he still might not be, fully aware of who's the target. All he knows is make sure that the hairnet is at the wedding.
Yeah. I still think his co-conspiratorship would be enough to make him a head shorter.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Can we talk about Bronn? So
let's do.
He's sort of betraying Tyrion here. Can we really blame him? Probably not. I mean, who would want to fight the Mountain?
Yeah,
guys.
He is a sellsword, and sellswords turning on their patrons are batting 1,000 at this point.
Right.
So.
And he isn't, in the sense that he hasn't actually been paid for this. He's refusing to take the payment for this,
Right, yeah.
So...
And he did seem kind of sad about it. Yes,
he did, yeah. No question. But is marrying Lolis a step up for him? That's the bit I'm a bit unsure about. What was he before? Well, he was Tyrion's right-hand man. They had a lot of fun together. His very wealthy retainer approved of his debauched lifestyle and let him have free reign. Now, Lolis, she's a Stokeworth. She's a noble, but they're not a huge family.
Very minor house. Right.
Very minor house. I just wonder if he's actually going to be kind of like a little bit bored with the life that he's planning for himself.
Yeah. Tyrion has this thought about, he correctly puts together that Cersei is the one that put this did the matchmaking here between Bronn and Lolis. And he wonders to himself, does Cersei know the kind of, I think he says serpent that she's invited into the Stokeworth household, and then he thinks, does she even care? I think he's right. It's dangerous for the Stokeworths to bring him in because he's already talking of murdering Lawless's older sister, Felice, to make it so that when Tanda dies, he will be the heir because he will be husband to Lawless.
There's no doubt he did hint at murdering the sister, but he doesn't need to, because if she's already in her 40s and has no children, then Lolis is going to inherit from her much
someday.
Later in life.
Yes, right.
But he doesn't have to necessarily rush it. I mean, it's not like you're kicked out on the gutter until it's your time to inherit. Presumably, you could stay there,
have a decent lifestyle there. Who I do worry for in that situation is Lawless's unborn child. I believe they think it's a son for whatever reason.
Right.
Because, then Bronn says, then I'm going to get her big with my child. Now, this first child will be a bastard, so he or she would not really be entitled to much. But I could see Bronn not wanting to take any chances and possibly making him disappear.
But, as you say, as a bastard, he doesn't have a claim, so... Yeah, and it could be a girl, so that would also lessen its claim. So, yeah. Oh, well. We can keep an eye on that if they come back into the story. And it felt like he was leaving the story, right? I mean, it's the sentence was he left the cell, the castle, and Tyrion's life, or something like that.
Yes.
Felt like a final goodbye.
It did.
So at the trial, Tywin directly asks, "Did you kill Joffrey?" And Tyrion says no. He asks, "Did Sansa start to it?" And Tyrion doesn't actually say no to that question. He then says that he choked, which is deflecting from the question asked. And also it's putting forth a theory that he already himself has discounted, because he himself concluded, because Sansa ran away, that this was poison, not choking.
Yes, right.
So it seemed a strange thing to do.
I guess he didn't want to answer the question of Sansa's involvement, so deflected, as you said.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right to point out that he's sort of honouring the vows he made to her. And he is a little hurt that she cares not a jot for the vows she made to him. But he has to understand that she was a child under duress when she made those vows. She did not want to make them. So
yes. And if, it's noble of him to defend her as her husband, but also if he suggested that she did do it, it would only work against him further.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Unless he said, I had nothing to do with it, but she did it. But there's no way to make that, you can't say, yeah, I think she did do it without looking guilty yourself, Yeah,
but you might try a subtler attack, though. I mean, if you're willing to betray her, you might say, look, I don't know, but like you, I find it very suspicious that she ran away.
I can certainly see where you're coming from with
if
that question.
I'd planned this with her, I'd be with her right now.
That is actually probably his best defense.
Right.
If we did this together, why would I be here and her disappeared?
Yeah. Varys is offering 100 gold stacks to find her. Find both of us for 200. I'll be with her. Yeah. The whole thing is a kangaroo court, as Jamie suspected it would be.
Right.
Balon Swan is an interesting first witness, because he actually starts by saying positive things about Tyrion. And Tyrion's astonished by this, that anything positive is being said. But Balon Swan, you see, has this incredibly high reputation. And so
yes, he does.
Starting with the positive about Tyrion, but then admitting to the fact that, well, Tyrion did actually hit the king. And then Oberyn Martell asks, don't you lose a hand for hitting the king? Did the imp's hand grow back?
Yes. Yeah. I kind of feel for Balon Swan, because, like you said, he's considered very honorable and has a very high reputation. And, to be in league with this crowd, it's kind of a shame he's pledged his life to protect this rotten family.
But he got the words in that he wanted to, because he said it was nothing more than a family argument.
Right.
And to Oberyn's thing, he's like, Tyrion's under my protection as well. He's part of the royal family.
Yeah. Yeah. So like you said, they start, and Tyrion's actually confused why Cersei would take this tact of putting up a witness who believes him innocent, because Balon Swan says, I don't believe Tyrion would have done this.
Right.
And he's like, well, why is she doing this? And then he discovers, you start with some honesty. You start with someone reputable.
But the worst part is the honesty includes one of the things he did against the king. That's the kicker. And
that's what both Meryn Trant and Boris Blunt
delight.
They back that story about the fisticuffs of pushing and the shoving after the riot. And then they go on to talk about the incident in the yard where Tyrion saved Sansa from Joff's humiliation. We all remember that. He had her blouse ripped off, and he wanted her, he was having her punched, and he wanted her stripped, and Tyrion stopped it. The only thing they mention is that Tyrion asked Joffrey if he knew what happened to King Aerys II, which it was taken as a threat on Joffrey's life. No mention of any of the things that Joffrey was doing at the time.
Yeah, and it's a very compelling case for why one should be allowed to cross-examine witnesses, because the whole failure to cross-examine these witnesses left their half-truths as the only testimony.
Yes, I'm going to mention that a little bit later in a thought that I have coming up.
Okay. And the Kettlebacks pull the same trick. They report the threats that Tyrion made to Cersei when she had Alayaya whipped, that her joy would turn to ashes in her mouth.
Right.
But they don't mention the Alayaya whipping part, which is so relevant to that story.
It is, although in this particular instance, even if told accurately, I think the public opinion would stay with Cersei.
True. Well, yes, true. Whipping a prostitute would probably not be that much of a crime, but the fact that she's
it'd be
awful,
less. Yes, it'd be less so than him threatening the royal children in front of others, which wasn't a. I know why he did it. I remember why he did it, because he needed to put up a defense to try and protect Alayaya.
Yeah,
but it was a bad look, and it was destined to come back and bite him.
Yeah. Well, if he ever went to a trial against his sister, that's for sure.
Yes, and then
she
Osmond
had access to millions of witnesses who would lie for her.
If all those things came true, it was definitely going to bite him.
That's what she should have said back to the ashes in your mouth thing. Well, this sentence is going to turn into the reason that you get found guilty at trial for regicide.
And you will turn to ashes.
Yeah. Pycelle, I think, has one of the most damning pieces of evidence, which is the collection of the poisons that Tyrion took from Pycelle's cell when he had Pycelle arrested. Help me remember. I believe he was doing it because he was still investigating Jon Arryn's death at the time. That's why he collected the poisons.
The reason he ended up collecting the poisons is he was trying to figure out who Cersei's mole was in the people that he was interacting with. So remember, he gave false stories to Pycelle, to Littlefinger, and to Varys, and to see which version got back to Cersei.
Yeah.
And it was Pycelle's version.
Yeah.
And so then when he realized that, that's when he broke into Pycelle's chamber with some of the Vale clansmen, Shagga and others, and had Pycelle hauled off to the Black Cells. And it was after that incident, that's when he stole the poisons.
But why did he steal the poisons?
Just to steal them. I can't recall any particular...
He wasn't curious about Jon Arryn's death? He wasn't trying to find if Pycelle had tears of Lys or anything like that?
I don't believe so. I think he was just taking things of interest, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
But it definitely is personal for Pycelle.
Oh,
This retribution feels very personal.
Remember, he had his beard cut off, right?
Yes. And thrown in a black cell, which could have been fatal for a man of his age and health. And remember, it was Cersei that had him freed from the cell.
Yeah. But his old testimony crumbles when he says that the poison was used to take the sweetest child God's ever put on this earth from us. It's like nobody in the room would be like, all right, this guy's lying.
This guy's we're discounting this guy immediately.
And of course, the worst part about this is Varys confirms everything that Pycelle says. So even though Pycelle doesn't seem particularly honest, Varys has no reason to lie and says, yeah, it's all true.
Yeah, and we get a name for this poison that is suspected to have killed Joffrey, because Pycelle names a bunch of the poisons that he has in front of him, and Tyrion says, well, is any of that cut off a man's breath? And he said, no, for that you need a rarer poison. At the Citadel, they call it the Strangler. So that's apparently what the name of the poison that they believe killed him was.
So we get a bunch of minor people reporting on things. The most interesting of which was Lady Merryweather. It's not someone I can remember coming across before, but she claims that she outright saw Tyrion put the poison in the chalice and hand it to the king. You'd like to think she would have piped up had she noticed this, but...
What's he putting in there? Yeah, and after the day's testimony, when Kevan comes back up to Tyrion's room, Kevin's colder and more distant, and Tyrion asks him, he thinks, oh, Kevan believes I'm guilty, and he says, what convinced you? And Kevan was convinced based on the stealing of the potions that Pycelle mentions, and Taena Merryweather's account of seeing Tyrion put something into this chalice. So, as you said, no opportunity for cross-examination. But if you were to have be allowed to do cross-examination here, I would ask Grand Maester Pycelle, did you have the Strangler poison?
Interestingly, the TV show tackles that, because that is a question mark over Pycelle's testimony. But the TV show tackles it.
If he doesn't have that poison, then the rest of the poisons are irrelevant, because those weren't the ones that killed him.
Right. But I'll tell you, in the TV show, he does the same thing. He lists off the poisons, and would these have made him? No, it was the Strangler that would have killed him in this way, and I don't have that anymore because he used it to kill the sweetest child.
Oh yes, well, yeah,
but
sure.
But the book does not say that, so I agree with you. I think that's an open question here.
Yeah, but then also the TV show is right. He very well could lie and say, "Oh, I did."
Right, of course.
And it's gone now. Right, exactly. Now the other bit, like you mentioned, we don't know much about Taena, Taena, Taena Merryweather, nor does Tyrion. He said she's virtually a stranger to him. But either she didn't see what she thought she saw, she was paid off to say she saw what she didn't see, or, as she's fairly new to court, she's hoping to get into the good graces of the Queen. Because
Lady Merryweather of Harrenhal.
Yeah, that's the designation they give out whenever they just need to reward somebody for something.
I feel like I'm the 8th person today to have been given that castle.
But ultimately, if his uncle was sold with these details, anyone believing these details might have been sold as well.
Yeah. What do you think of Varys' testimony? I mean, he did not lie, I don't think, looking at what he said, but you felt that out of friendship he might have held a few of the more damning things back. One damning thing he did hold back was Shay. He never mentioned Shay.
True. He did not.
But she really isn't relevant to this, so...
Yes, exactly. She's not to this, no.
Some of the things he voiced could have been held back, you feel like.
Yeah, certainly the word friendship that you used, he certainly doesn't come across as a friend here.
No.
He just laid it all out there for Cersei against Tyrion, and his testimony was very damning. Documentation to back it all up, and again, it was full of half truths. Like he mentioned Tyrion scheming to part Joffrey from the Hound's protection. What he's referencing was simply that Tyrion had chosen the Hound and Balon Swan to lead sorties during the Battle of the Blackwater, which Varys told Cersei about, and then she confronted Tyrion during that lunch where Alayaya was then presented. And then he also mentioned that Tyrion, I think this was actually put in the summary, that Tyrion talked with Bronn about replacing Joffrey with Tommen. That is strongly misrepresented. That was the night of the riot, after the riot had happened. Bronn had said that had Tyrion ever thought about how easy life would be if the younger one had been born first. Tyrion's response was that he could have Bronn's head off for that. That was it. That was the end of the conversation. Unfortunately, it happened in front of Varys and has been spun into looking something much worse than it is.
I have a tangential story which perhaps defends Varys a little bit. I used to play soccer with your senior director at work, who I'm not sure you still work with that guy anymore, but he, in my soccer, he got sent off and he faced a 3-match ban for getting this red card. And as team captain, he had me be his defense in the court of the red card. And I said, I didn't see it. It's the kind of thing he would do. And he got the 3-match ban.
Oh, no.
He mocks me every day for being the worst lawyer ever.
You're fired.
Yeah. But I really didn't see it. I was like, yeah, it's the kind of thing you would do. Yeah, so I just have sympathy for Varys, just saying,
Right.
Even to your friends, you can sometimes accidentally sabotage their entire existence.
Yeah, now, there's all supposed to be under oath. So, he is supposed to tell the truth, but he could tell the truth fully and not just slanted truths. But he also has to remember who's in power right now.
Exactly.
And it is not Tyrion.
Yes. He's playing the game a little bit there for sure.
Yes.
But thinking about that, so Cersei, one thing, right? Her son was murdered here. It's sometimes you forget that, and she is broken up about it. Now she hates Tyrion, and she would love to see Tyrion dispatched, but she must have a sneaking suspicion that he didn't do this.
Right. Yes.
I would think. I don't know. I mean, she knows that that Joffrey pointed at him, and Tyrion had opportunity.
Yes,
but
I could, from an unbiased observer, you could definitely say you have to know that there's a chance that this wasn't Tyrion's work. But if you're Cersei and you hate him so much, and he said the things that he said to you about your ashes, your joy turning to ashes in your mouth, and you're holding the cup, and Joffrey's pointing at you, I could see where she's making this very solid leap that this has got to be what it is.
But she's bribing witnesses to make it happen.
Yes.
On some levels, as a bereaved parent, I would want the actual killer brought to justice.
Right.
I could poison Tyrion any day I want.
Yeah.
Find me the actual killer. Right.
Well, I'll say she is pulling out all the stops, as you mentioned, to ensure Tyrion goes down for this. In this is where I mentioned earlier I was going to bring up cross-examination and such. In this game of prosecutor versus defense attorney here, I feel like Tyrion is smarter than how he's been handling this so far. He's got no unique witnesses of his own. Fine. He's confined to his room. Hard to find witnesses that say he didn't put poison in the chalice. I mean, how could anybody say, no, he definitively didn't put poison in that chalice? So, okay, I get it. But, use your noggin. Get creative here. Call the same witnesses back up and ask them pointed questions about their testimony.
Yeah, I wondered about that too. I wondered if something about the rules of the court said you couldn't pull a witness was for one side or the other and couldn't be used by both.
Yeah,
but you're right. That's what I would do too. I would call the Kettle Blacks. I would call
Pycelle
Varys.
and Varys.
Pycelle, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Now, clearly being under oath doesn't go very far here in this court, but if pressed hard, maybe you could get some of them to crack or at least sway, get them to look nervous and uncertain enough.
What I would have done when I was defending your director, I would have said, I would remind you you're under oath. Yeah, it sounds like the kind of thing he would have done. Yeah.
Although, like I said, it is hard to prove innocence here when the entire case is circumstantial.
Yeah.
It's all just he said, she said, he said.
Yeah.
And I think if he did call the witnesses back up and had them give the other half of the truths that they gave, he could definitely prove that Joffrey is a monster, but I think it would still be harder to prove that Tyrion didn't kill him. You might be able to say he maybe should have killed him because he's a terrible person, but hard to prove that he didn't actually kill him. And, well, speaking of Cersei and witnesses, she mentions at the last day of trial that we had here in this chapter that she has one final witness for the next day. We aren't told who it is, but it must be pretty damning if it's the last witness held for the last day. So I will say there's clues in a conversation she had with Jaime in Jaime's last chapter, but I'm not going to say who it is.
But are we going to have any more trial? Because now that Oberyn's announced he's going to be his champion, aren't we going to go to trial by combat now? So we won't need any more witnesses.
Possibly. And we'll have to see how that plays out, I guess.
Okay. One character who's notable by their absence is Jaime. It's interesting that Kevan is the one bringing some solace to Tyrion in his cell. No sign of
Right.
Jaime. Now, Jaime is Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. He's got some duties, but no sign of him at all. Interesting.
It definitely is weird that he's come home from this whole journey. He's been obviously primarily thinking about Cersei, but he's also thought about Tyrion. I'm thinking, with the information we have right now, that Cersei has put a hard stop on Jaime seeing Tyrion.
Right. And Tywin. I mean, Tywin hates Tyrion in a different way than Cersei does, but enough to let him die for a crime that you probably didn't commit. Might he give him the black anyway, even if he's found guilty? If he's found guilty, and at that moment Tyrion says, can I take the black? Might his father do that? Because, hey, that's all Tywin really wants, right? Is to be rid of him.
Right. Yeah. You'd think that Tywin, as a judge, might ask some follow-up questions to some of this testimony to discern truth from lies. I mean, surely he knows more about the details of the events than what's being represented on the stand here. But maybe he wants Tyrion found guilty, like you said, as a chance to get rid of him.
Yeah.
Maybe he's going to, like you said, maybe he's going to give him the black, let him take the black regardless. He would just like to wrap it up sooner. Yeah. Just take it now. And
okay, so Kevan's role is interesting here because he's helping Tyrion. He's sending Pod. He's bringing him, whatever he needs to help find new witnesses. But he's definitely his brother's, Tywin's man. And Tyrion doesn't trust the offer of taking the black, of confessing and taking the black. He references Ned Stark, and he thinks just generally that, he saw plenty of murderers and rapists at the wall, but no regicides.
Yes.
So, can he trust the offer? Kevan obviously thinks he can, and Kevan passionately defends Tywin's honesty. And so Tyrion should accept it, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I can certainly understand why Tyrion feels uncertain about whether he can trust his father's offer. But personally, I think Kevan believes what he is telling Tyrion.
I do too, no question. Kevan is not faking this. Kevan might be misguided and wrong, but he's not faking.
I agree. And he brings up a good point that regardless of whether Tyrion's found guilty or innocent, he's going to struggle to survive in King's Landing. Not just socially, also physically survive. His reputation's been ruined. Even if he moved back to Casterly Rock, he might struggle because Joffrey was a Lannister king. He might have had the last name Baratheon, but he was very much a Lannister. So
yeah.
But speaking of taking the black, it's not such a bad deal if honored, especially before Oberyn's offer of being his champion, and especially after this last day's testimony with Varys's damning things that he revealed, and honestly, even after Oberyn, offered to be Tyrion's champion, it still might not be the worst idea to just take the black, because there's no guarantee that the Red Viper is going to beat the Mountain.
Well, true. That is a worry. I mean, Oberyn doesn't look very worried. He looks confident in himself, but we know what Gregor Clegane is like. The only time we've seen him bested in any way was in the joust with Loras Tyrell. But as soon as he was knocked off his horse, he then absolutely annihilated Loras Tyrell and was only saved by the Hound.
Right. Yes, and that was Bronn's concern. Bronn was like, I'd have to be crazy to not be worried about fighting this guy, So
if there was any lingering doubt about the fact that witnesses were being bribed, Oberyn confirms it, because Cersei is bribing him. She is offering herself in marriage if he delivers Tyrion's guilty verdict against Tyrion.
Yeah. Now, of course, I'm pretty sure she doesn't have any intention of actually marrying Oberyn. But she's certainly hinting at it nonetheless. And now that Jaime's back in town, this seduction game that she's been using to get, to woo people into doing things she wants them to do, it could be severely impacted because, be tougher for her to follow through on any of these seduction offers with Jaime in the Red Keep with her.
True. It is Oberyn's self-confession is quite noteworthy. I mean, he lists the reasons why he might be in the dock instead of Tyrion, were it not for Cersei's immediate accusation. And it's a much more compelling case in many ways.
It is.
Because there's several strands to motive, there's several strands to opportunity. It's...
I agree. Some of the reasons he mentions are that he knows poisons. He studied at the Citadel. He earned, I think, 6 links of a chain. But then he traveled to the Free Cities, and that's where he learned about poisons, and he's known to poison his sword. So if poison's being bandied about, and Oberyn Martell is in the room, he certainly is going to get a few glances in his direction. Also, it's very well known that the Dornish do not like the Tyrells. So keeping the Tyrells far away from the crown would also be an important factor.
And you have a good story and background about why there's this animosity between the two. And also how that story relates to Oberyn's feelings towards Cersei as well.
That's right. And not the least of which of the reasons that he might look guilty is that Myrcella is to marry his nephew Trystane. And in Dornish law, it's primogeniture, not just the oldest male child inherits from the parents. So in that case, Myrcella would be ahead of Tommen in line to the Iron Throne.
And now they have a vested interest in Myrcella claiming the throne because she's going to be married to a Martell.
Right, yeah.
But then that's a really strong pointer to Oberyn being the culprit here, because
exactly
he cleared the one thing that stopped her from getting to the throne. Well, I suppose he could get rid of Tommen too. That might finish the job.
That'd really. But we were talking about earlier, we don't know who poisoned Joff. It could have been Oberyn. He was told early on arriving in King's Landing that Gregor was off limits. That it was Amory Lorch was the person that had killed his family, and that guy was already dead, so just drop all this vengeance. Well, maybe this is a way of getting him access to Gregor after all. If he, it's kind of an elaborate scheme here, but if you frame Tyrion for murder and then be his champion, then you get your chance to kill Gregor.
True.
So, I mean, it's theoretically possible. It's a bit out there, I guess, but...
So, do you think Cersei has a quandary if Myrcella is crowned queen while she's in Dorne?
I do. I do, because, we've heard her thoughts on desire for power as a woman, and, she loves Myrcella dearly, and, giving up control. If she backs her daughter, she's giving up control of the child who is with her right now physically, that is more malleable, is here and present, and she can kind of preside over more easily.
How did that work out with Joffrey, though?
And also backing Myrcella sets a precedent for Cersei being the heir to Casterly Rock.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
So I don't know how Tywin would feel about that. He'd get an heir back, but it's not the one he's been aiming for.
Yeah.
But, it is not... It's not Tyrion, and so that's a major step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But if she backs Tommen, it seems like she doesn't support her daughter or women's rights. So, I can see how she would, like Oberyn said, what's she going to do? Wage war on her daughter?
Right. I guess what she would hope is that they would just ignore the fact, until Myrcella arrives with an army behind her. They just ignore it, pretend it never happened.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so
maybe.
Tyrion had a golden opportunity to betray Tywin Lannister, who is presiding over the case that's going to lead to Tyrion's death, and he didn't take it.
Right.
He knows. I mean, he doesn't know. He wasn't there. He says it himself. I was not there. I was, still too young to be there. But he defends his father. He says his father did not order that and would not have ordered that. He's got to suspect that he did.
Well, what we know, I think it was what Tywin told Jaime last Jaime chapter, was, I hope I have that right, and it wasn't that he told Tyrion this. He told one of his children
Close enough.
that he didn't give the order to kill Elia, to Gregor to kill Elia. He wanted the heirs removed. He didn't want Elia dead. I think he actually told this to Tyrion himself. Now that I'm saying this through, regardless, the reason that Gregor killed Elia is because Tywin didn't specifically say don't kill Elia.
Right.
So he did give the command to have the children killed, though.
Okay, so then Tyrion knows that at least partly Tywin is to blame and should be in the frame for this. But
Sure.
he could hang his denial on the, actually he didn't do this, I know for a fact he didn't do this. But why? Why are you defending the guy who's trying to kill you?
Yeah.
Okay, I have two theories on this and see if you like one or the other.
Okay, hit me with them.
Tyrion has realised halfway through this conversation where this might end. If he can pin the blame, so the blame is Armory Lorch, who's already dead, and Gregor Clegane. We know Gregor Clegane is coming to town to be the champion for Cersei.
Right.
We know that Oberyn Martell wants vengeance against the person or persons who killed Elia and the children.
Okay.
If he can keep the focus entirely on Gregor Clegane, and Oberyn Martell wants Gregor Clegane dead, he might volunteer to be his champion.
Oh, yes. Which is how it worked out.
Exactly.
So
Tyrion saw this coming and thought, I'm going to defend my father so as not to muddy the waters. Because if you say, he the kind of guy who definitely would order that kind of thing. I wasn't there, but yeah, definitely.
It's something he would have done.
Then Oberyn Martell might say, well, in that case, you're on your own. Fight the mountain yourself. I'm off to kill your father.
Right. Yes, I see. I see your line of thinking there.
Right. Option 2, he's a
Option
Lannister.
2.
First,
Yes.
foremost, and last. He's a Lannister. Always will be.
That was my thought until you brought up option 1, and now I see the merits of option 1. I think he just answered because, like you said, he's a Lannister, and that was his first thought: is I'm going to protect my family. And you know, even as Joffrey was dying, Tyrion started, and Cersei was holding Joffrey. Instead of going in the other direction, he started to walk to them. I think because he wanted to bring them comfort, Cersei comfort, as her son was dying. I think he still has that in him.
You know, Tyrion is the only true Lannister. He's a Lannister first and foremost. He would defend all Lannisters to the very death. Nobody else would. None of the others would. He's the only one.
Yeah.
Maybe Jaime. Maybe Jaime as well.
Maybe, yeah.
All right. So we talked a little bit about whether Oberyn actually has a chance. He's big and strong, and everyone's afraid of him. He has been injured a couple of times in battles in the Riverlands, so there's a chance he's not quite the force he once was. But if Bronn is afraid, then pretty much everyone should be afraid.
I'm not sure I'd want to test the theory of whether he is what he once was or not.
In the TV show, this is where the mountains actor was changed to the Icelandic guy who became the world's strongest.
Right.
Who was the
Halfthor? Is that his name? Halfthor?
Yeah. So he comes to town and he's absolutely fierce. There's a shot of him and Cersei where she comes up to like his elbow. All right. Do you have some background for us?
As you alluded to earlier, I do have some background for us. So Oberyn tells of how a Lord Tyrell was tasked with keeping the Dornish knees bent after the young dragon conquered Dorne. He mentions about how this Tyrell chased rebellion after rebellion around the kingdom, squashing the uprisings. While doing so, he stayed in local castles and slept in the Lord's chambers. Well, one night, while in a Lord's bed, he pulled on a sash to summon a woman. Instead, the canopy above him opened, and 100 scorpions fell on him. His death sparked the uprising that would undo the young dragon's efforts to tame Dorne within 2 weeks. So, let's look a bit more in depth at the details of this story. The Lord Tyrell was actually Lionel Tyrell. As Oberyn said, he was tasked with keeping the Dornish in line after their forceful conquest by Daeron I in 159 AC. During Lionel's wild goose chase around Dorne, chasing uprising after uprising, he was aided by the Dornish Lord Corgyle, who hails from Sandstone. Lord Corgyle even personally subdued one of the most notorious of the rebels. However, it was while staying in Sandstone that Lionel met his scorpion-filled end. The motive behind Lord Corgyle's actions have been lost to history. Some believe Corgyle felt underappreciated by Lionel for all the aid and effort he'd given the Tyrell Lord with keeping the king's peace. However, others think that their murder was the culmination of a plot to first win Lionel Tyrell's trust by helping him, and then murdering him to spark the rebellion in full.
How interesting. And we alluded to why Oberyn told that story. It was because he culminated it by saying, "But I'd rather get in bed with 100 scorpions than with your sister."
Yes, he did.
So, in comparison with the television show, there's a lot, so I pieced it all together. A scene is inserted where Tywin asks Oberyn to judge, as I mentioned. In it, it's Tywin that lays out the circumstantial case against the Red Viper, presumably in hopes of strong-arming him into towing the line as a judge. Oberyn then accuses Tywin of Ellia's murder. Tywin categorically denies it. "If you help me serve justice to the king's assassins, then I'll help you serve it to Ellia's." They shake hands. Tyrion's captivity is more onerous. I don't know if you noticed this, but Tyrion ate quite well while he was a prisoner. His breakfast was always quite nice.
Yeah.
It's harsher in the TV show. Pod has to smuggle food in. Pod covers some of the ground that Kevan did. He'll gather the witnesses. Sansa has fled. Tyrion thinks that the real murder is intentionally making Tyrion look guilty by adding Sansa's departure.
I see.
Varys has been called by the prosecution. Bronn is forbidden from visiting because a known associate. So Tyrion asks if he can see Jaime. Pod then admits that he's been approached by someone asking him to testify against Tyrion.
I kind of wondered about that. I kind of wondered about that in the book. You know, why wasn't Pod coerced into doing
They already had enough witnesses.
I guess so.
Tyrion tells him to accept. If the carrot doesn't work, then they'll use a stick, and Tyrion doesn't want Pod's blood on his hands too. He bids him farewell with there has never lived a more loyal squire, and sort of a manly tear rolls down both cheeks. The trial is abridged, thankfully, because this went on forever, but contains the main ideas. Cersei herself testifies, which is interesting. Maybe she's the extra witness we haven't seen yet in the book.
Yes, that's a very good option.
Rather on point, Pycelle has the necklace, which, if you remember, the necklace replaced the hairnet.
Oh, yes.
Which was found on Dantus's body, which is a bit too convenient, and they point to the missing capsule, and traces of poison were found there. It seems a bit Quincy, if you ask me. Varys at least looks pained while he's giving his testimony, and as Tywin gives Tyrion permission to ask Varys a question, and he asks Varys, "You said that you would not forget what I did at the Blackwater. Have you forgotten?" And Varys says, "I never forget anything."
Okay.
An interesting scene is inserted where Jaime bargains for Tyrion's life to Tywin. The outcome of that is the offer to go to the Wall that Jaime then takes to Tyrion.
Okay.
The request for Tyrion's trust is not in Tywin, but in Jaime.
Right. Trust me that I'll negotiate this for you.
Yeah. There is an extra witness who might be the one you're talking about, and that person's testimony drives Tyrion over the edge. He demands a trial by combat without even thinking about it at that point. Finally, at that point, Bronn visits, and their conversation is exactly the book conversation.
Wow.
Word for word. Yeah. Then lastly, Oberyn visits, and he now tells the story of meeting Tyrion as a baby, which we heard in the book in Tyrion 5, when he first meets Oberyn Martell. Martell said, "I met you once before." That story is the story that he feeds Tyrion in the sort of build-up to this is why I don't like your sister. Because you remember the story, they really wanted to see the baby. When they saw it, they were disappointed. It was just an ordinary baby with a slightly bigger head. And Cersei grabs its penis and squeezes it really hard until Tyrion screamed and screamed and screamed.
Yes,
and
I remember.
He was saying, he doesn't talk about the scorpions or anything like that. He's like, I don't want her to be happy, this lady.
Okay.
So I'll do anything to foil her. And he is in the right. So he says something about there not being any justice. Tyrion says, you're in the wrong place for justice. And he says, no, I'm in exactly the right place for justice because everybody who is involved in my sister's murder is right here. And I'll start by being their champion. And Peter Dinklage, excellent acting at this point. He's practically in tears when he realizes where Oberyn's headed. So great stuff. Absolutely terrific stuff. Yes, but sir. God, I had to watch like 6 hours of TV to find it. It was all over the place. Pedantry corner. If there was any pedantry in this chapter, it was swept away on a tide of fantastic stuff.
Yes. Great chapter.
News and notes.
Well, we don't have much in the way of news and notes this week, but we are going to have a special guest again next week.
Exciting. Because I'm going to visit my mum, so I won't be here next week. So thank you.
And that's exciting too.
Yeah, it'll be good. Yeah, going to my sister's wedding. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. With the shoes.
Yes, with sensible shoes.
With your mom in the shoes.
My mum will not be in sensible shoes. She will be in painful shoes.
Right.
And we're still cooking up the cool ideas for the new Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer levels. We tested out the spoiler segment last week. Really, honestly, we can't do it, Mackelly, because I don't know spoilers. I'll need too much spoon feeding before we start.
We'll just have to do it on episodes when Jenny is here with us.
Yeah, that's a good idea, yeah. All right, so let's conclude. So the darkness was really descending for Tyrion here. I mean, it looked like one-way street to disaster. But there's a glimmer here. I mean, Oberyn clearly believes he can beat... I mean, he doesn't seem even slightly troubled by the prospect of fighting the Mountain.
I noticed that too. I think any normal person should be at least a little concerned.
Yeah, his attitude is a little bit like Marjorie's to marrying Joffrey.
Right, like, it'll be fine. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Though, if let's say that Oberyn wins, because he sure seems awfully confident about that, and Tyrion is acquitted of all charges, walks free. Will Cersei accept that decision, or is she just gonna, as you said earlier, just gonna have paid someone to have him killed?
Yeah, Yeah, he better run fast. There'll be at least 3 kettle blacks at his back.
Yeah. But one thing that seemed awfully clear in this chapter is that he's lost any friend he's ever had here in the Red Keep and King's Landing larger.
Shay?
Well, yeah, we haven't seen her, heard from her. Yeah. Who knows? Otherwise, I mean, everyone's turned on him. And I guess they're being bribed by Cersei, and either they weren't good enough friends with him anyway that they're like, sure, I'll do it. For 50 gold dragons, I'll be happy to whip up some story about him.
I've got 50 new golden friends to replace the one.
Or she's got dirt on, others and is saying...
That's where Varys comes in.
Yes, right. So...
Yeah.
He doesn't have... He's awfully lonely here in King's Landing.
It's hard to imagine a good outcome for him here anyway, but at least he has the chance of surviving the trial now because Oberyn looks like the right guy to have on your side.
Yeah, he is an excellent fighter. There's no doubt about that.
So I wondered all episode where Jaime's been, but I can stop because the next chapter is a Jaime POV.
That's right. We're staying right here in the Red Keep.
Okay, it'll be exciting. All right.
Yes.
There are 4 ways that you can help us. You can leave us a positive review. That was the best way you can help us. You can buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal and become a sustainer at the Lord Paramount or Knight of the Realm level and get the great perks that are associated with those levels. Or you could donate directly to the cause through our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, you can check us out on our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghosts Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.